everybody know what that means? Well, in Boulder and Colorado, probably, especially, we need to explain that. Crack in Northern Ireland is good fun, really. And in other places in the world, it means something else. So we always have to explain ourselves a bit. But this time we're going to do more than explain ourselves. We're actually going to show you. We're going to actually do it. And this is what's called a session, a bat and ball session, where we're going to have storytelling, singing, storytelling, singing. And you may have some questions, but you know what's going to happen? They're all going to be answered in all the storytelling and singing. But at the end, if you do want to come up and meet the stars, there's nobody else in here. So when I was asked to be a moderator, I'm not known for being moderate in anything. And thank God I don't have to be, because you don't have to leave. Now, before we get into it, I just want to tell you, you'll also have a couple more chances to hear them here in Boulder. Over at the Riverside Cafe on Saturday at 6 p.m. at the Riverside. Both of them will be doing sessions again. And, you know, the more you get into it and the more you get to know the songs, well, maybe you'll go on tour with them and tour back to the Glens of Antrim, where they're from. And it's a beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. I'm from Belfast myself, and it's a place where we'd all go for picnics on a Sunday afternoon. And then we might go up the glens, which is a glen is where a river eats into the basalt. Now that's the Giant's Causeway. There was a big giant who lived in Northern Ireland, and he had a bit of a fight with the Scottish one. And he knelt down and he got up a big bit of rock and chucked it at the Scottish giant, and it landed in the middle of the Irish Sea. And I hear that's the Isle of Man. But what was left was a huge hole, Loch Ness, and that's the biggest loch without a monster in the whole of the UK and Ireland. Am I right, guys? Phew, I won that one a wee, you know. That's the art of storytelling. But I'm a geologist myself, so I love the basalts and the area they're from. But what I love even more is the fact that they have been brought up with storytelling and singing and using it in ways that is fun, but also ways that have healed the kids in the Troubles, as we called it, in Northern Ireland. And they became known and really, let's say, homed in on their talents, really providing the light at the end of a tunnel for more people than we will probably ever know. And I want to personally thank them for that. So thank you both, Fergal and Liz, very much. It's huge. I think maybe I'll say that really speaks to both of them. And I'm going to let whoever's going to start first. And then if there's any wee things I can pop up and say in between, I will. But mainly we're here for the crack. Okay? Fergal, it's over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. It's great to see everyone in this room and a lovely spring afternoon. The last time I was in this room, the snow was falling out that window. So I'll introduce myself for those of you who I haven't met yet, as I always introduce myself. I'm the only son of Joseph and Mary. Joseph and Mary Lynn of Cushendall, County Antrim. And it's interesting, Susan, talking about geology and how, if you go right back to Bulla Mountain and the outskirts of Cushendall, just behind Liz's place, there's evidence there in the museums all over the world of basalt axes and hammerheads carved in the rock in the Stone Age. And I often think that stories began back then. You know, the world was built on stories. It was built by somebody hammering an axe going, how did you do that? and somebody saying, "Did you hear what I heard?" And thus began the beginning of storytelling and the passing on of stories. But we're here today to talk about and sing about courtship. So if you're thinking of proposing to anyone, this could be the time to do it. If there's anybody that's been on your mind, you want to shuffle over beside them now and be nearby to give them a little elbow, because some of the stories just might inspire you to make that move. I would love it if you know the chorus of any of the songs that I'm singing. Please join in, please raise the roof. And if anybody gives you a dirty look or anything like that, just ignore them. Just go for it. Just go for it. And I know we're on CD and whatnot, so just go for it and enjoy it. This first song, I like to think, was written by an ancestor of mine. I'm working on it. I haven't quite got there yet, but I'm working on it. He was a man called Thornton, and he died a pauper on the streets of Chicago. But he wrote one of the most beautifulest songs of romance and courtship that I've ever heard. My grandmother was from County Mayo, and she was Annie Thornton. And all her family, most of her family, emigrated to the United States and settled in Philadelphia and Atlanta, Georgia, and Chicago. So I'm working hard on the connection. So please feel free to join in. When first I saw the love light in your eyes, I thought the world held not much joy for me. And even though we've drifted far apart, I never dreamed of what I dreamed of thee. I love you as I've never loved before. Since first I saw you on the village green. Come to me, though our dreams of love are o'er. I love you as I loved you since we were sweet, since we were sweet. 16. We tried together. I love you as I've never loved before. Since first I saw you, since first I saw you on the village green. Come to me, though our dreams of love are o'er. I loved you as I love you, I loved you as I love you. When we were sweet, when we were sweet. 16. Lovely. Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. Hello. Hands up anybody who's ever heard the two of us together before. Hands up who's never. Hands up who couldn't care less. You're just here to get away from politics and economics and everything. So This was Fergal's idea about courtship, right? His wife's arriving tomorrow night. I don't know if that's anything to do with it, but anyway. And I said to him, Fergal, there's just one problem. In nearly all the stories I tell about romance, somebody dies. Because that's the sort of stories I really, really like. So this afternoon, I'm going to tell you stories. Some of them have a little bit of magic in them. You know about banshees, do you? Bet Susan does. The banshee is a fairy woman. If she cries, nothing will happen to you. But somebody you know is going to pass on into the next world, you know? Darby O'Gill and the Little People had a really traumatic effect on me when I was young. The younger people won't know about that, but it's a Disney movie. So I'm going to tell you some stories. I'm going to try and conjure up Ireland. Where we live in the north, there's differences, you know? If you go to the Republic of Ireland, for example, the post boxes are green. Up with us, they're red. We talk about banshees, we talk about fairies, we talk about these things. So as we go through today, you'll get my accent on your ear. Fergal and I live about 12 miles from Scotland, up in the top northeast coast. And hopefully you'll get a bit of Ireland here. But I want to tell you a story that I'm very fond of, and it happened back in the 50s. At that time, young men in England were called up for national service, you know. And there was a young soldier, and he was going off to do his national service, and he was waiting to go on a train, and he spotted a bookshop. I always like to get stories about books in. Anyway, he spotted a bookshop, and he went in, and he looked all around to see a book that he liked, and he saw one, and yes, this was the one. And as he was on the train going towards camp, he was going through it, and he noticed that the previous owner, for it was a used book, had underlined portions and put notes in the margin. He was going, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, do you know, that's exactly what I think. And at the back of the book, there was a woman's name and address. Now, this was long before texting and email, so he wrote her a letter. He said, you won't believe what's happened. I found this book. You really think the same way as I do. Would you have any other suggestions of books that I might get? She wrote back. She was writing from London. He was away up near Birmingham. And she gave him a list of suggestions, of course. He went to the local library. He borrowed them. And so they started this exchange of correspondence. Lovely. Nothing more satisfying than a love letter, you know, but it hadn't grown to love at that stage. But the more you do communicate with people, well, fondness develops. And he was going to get some leave, and he said to her, do you know, I can come up to London. Would you meet me? She wrote back. She said, yes. And you know, I thought that was so romantic. So he said, well, where will we meet? She said, Euston Station. Your train comes in there. I'll meet you under the clock. There's a sort of rendezvous place. And he said, will you send me a photograph? And she said, no, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. At that point, he got a little nervous, you know. You know, her name was Susan, funnily enough. So he thought maybe she's ancient. Or maybe she's really ugly, or there's something wrong. And he thought, no trust. She writes a very good letter. You owe it to her. So she would know him. He was in uniform. He had his kit bag over his back. And he'd been away at camp a long time, is all I'm going to say. And he was coming through, you know, the ticket barrier. And he knew where the clock was way over there. But what did he see coming towards him? But the most, well, luscious-looking blonde. She was tall, she was willowy, she had what my mother would have called a tight-fitting costume, sort of moved with, and she did that sashaying walk, and she'd hair down over one eye, sort of a la Veronica Lake, if you can remember that, and she sort of flicked it and she said, hello, soldier, how'd you like to come and spend some time with me? And he, no, thank you, thanks very much. But he watched her. Oh, she was lovely. And then he made his way over towards the clock. And there she stood. There she stood, this small, older, fairly dumpy woman. And she'd said she'd hold a red rose, and sure enough, there was the red rose. So he stepped forward, reached out his hand and said, hello, you must be Susan. She said, I don't know who Susan is, but a blonde girl in a green suit gave me this rose to hold. She said, she's going for a cup of tea, and if you came and asked me, you've passed the test, she'll meet you in the tea room.
Oh, man. I never get tired of hearing that story. Never. Okay. Before I go any further, I just want to ask, is there a Melanie Shields in the room. All right, this is a song about Melanie Shields. I almost, my blood pressure sort of seared briefly because one of our producers, when I walked into the room up the stairs, I saw her name badge, Melanie, and I went, oh. So, Melanie's daddy owned a bar. It's always a good connection. But Melanie wanted doors with brass handles. And she wanted lights, chandeliers that looked like candles. And she wanted 4 horses and a carriage at the door. But she doesn't call to see me anymore. Oh. Yeah. And we were 5 years old. She had a wee white bicycle when I first smiled at her. She went riding over by Tivera and I went running after. She came back through Gordaclee and down by the back lane. I went walking down there and we got together again. She wanted doors with brass handles, chandeliers with the lights that looked like candles, 4 horses and a carriage at the door. But she doesn't come to see me anymore. Do you want to try and sing that chorus and I'll feel less emotional? She wanted doors with brass handles, chandeliers with lights that look like candles, 4 horses and a carriage at the door. But she doesn't come to see me anymore. Thank you. Great. We got empty beer bottles, made our own beer out of puddled, dirty water that was always very near. We sat on the fields and drank it, put it to our head, and then we had to go back home, for we had to go to bed. She wanted doors with brass handles, chandeliers with the lights that look like candles, 4 horses and a carriage at the door. But she doesn't come to see me anymore. There's a photograph of her and me on top of my piano. And where she is these days, I simply don't know. There's a rumor going about, was the reason that we had no teeth was we kissed each other and they all fell out. She wanted doors with brass handles and chandeliers with the lights that looked like candles, 4 horses and a carriage at the door. But she doesn't come to see me anymore. Thank you.
The lethal thing about being a storyteller, well, in my storytelling world, is that You go to say one thing and then something else pops into your head and it's all his fault. Because the business about the carriage, I went to see Cinderella on Saturday. What else would two storytellers do in Phoenix, Arizona on a 97-degree day? But anyway, I grew up listening to a lot of those fairy tales. You know, waiting for the handsome prince to hack his way through a forest, you know, that sort of thing. You know, they'd scale towers, all of that, the long hair. Or, I've kissed a few frogs in my time, is all I'm going to say. So, I grew up listening to these stories, these fairy tales, and they don't always work out that way. So I'm going to tell you a traditional Irish story, but before I do, another story has zinged into my head. You know the way an email comes in and it goes ding? So one's just come in. So I am the youngest, or I was the youngest in a family of 5. So when I was born, the others were all grown up. To talk about courtship, I just went to a panel on sexuality, and my brother was 15. My next brother was 15 when I was born, and my mother sent him out to cut a hedge, and then she came back with me. He had absolutely no idea what was going on at 15, so it just shows you we've changed our times. But my eldest brother was in the Royal Air Force. And he was walking out, as we would call dating for the younger people. He was walking out with a girl from our local town of Ballymena, and her name was O'Hara. We'll come back to that. And he'd left her home, and he was walking out to our house. Now, we live, it was in the country in those days. And you go up over a high hill, and there are 2 high walls with trees at the top. And as he was walking up in full uniform, he heard this wailing, sort of a... And he looked up and he saw this white woman, long white hair, and he knew what it was. He knew it was a banshee, and he started to run. And as he ran, she started hopping from tree to tree. And so this big guy, was 6 foot tall, very handsome, started stripping off, first of all, the long petrol blue long coat, then the jacket, then the sweater, as you would call it, jumper, as we'd call it, pullover, and then the shirt. And my mother said he returned to the house, his 2 eyes staring in his head, wearing his undershirt, his vest, as we would call it, shirt, undershirt, and said he had seen and heard a banshee. Well, my mother was English born. She didn't believe him. But the girl O'Hara's grandmother died that night. And if you hear the banshee, if your name starts with Mac or O, you have a much better chance of having a banshee associated with your family. So think about that, people. But I last heard that story about 7 years ago. Before my brother died, I went out to Australia to visit him. And when he told me that story as a man in his 70s, maybe nearly 80, the eyes were standing in his head as he told me that story. So never dismiss a story. And now for something a little lighter. Right. This story I heard from a traveller woman. It's probably one of my favourite stories. I tell it in high schools a lot. But it's for everybody, really. And this story, and it's Fergal's fault because he wanted me to tell this story. This story I heard from a traveller woman who'd heard it from her grandmother. Traveller, you might know the name gypsy or tinker. Travelling community don't want to be called that anymore, so member of the travelling community. So the woman who told me it was called Mary, and the heroine of the story is called Mary. And this girl, Mary, grew up in a small village over in County Mayo. I'll tell you the name of it afterwards. And Mary was a beautiful young woman. She had long black hair, pale skin, and she loved dancing. But you know, in those distant times, there were no nightclubs, no discos. You'd have to wait for a notice to go up on the wall, dance in the parochial hall, such and such a night. And the minute she saw the notice, she had to go straight to her father and ask permission. No such thing as saying, I'm away out. And if her father was in a good mood, he'd say yes, but there was always a but. And the but was, he would walk her to the dance and he would walk her home, take it or leave it. Next problem she had after she got permission, what to wear. Perennial problem. There was only one half-decent shop in that village. And as she was walking past it, she spied this most beautiful red dress. And she knew with her dark hair and her pale skin, this dress would suit her very well. But when she saw the price, not a hope. And you know how it is, at least it is with me, if you see something and you really want it, you can't help yourself but speak out loud. And she said, I'd give my heart and soul for that dress. And the minute she said that, a voice behind her said, would you give me your heart and soul for the dress? Indeed I would, she said, without looking round. And when she turned her head, there he was. A tall, dark, handsome stranger wearing a beautiful dark suit and holding a parcel out. There's your dress. Oh, she said, I can't take that. I don't know you. Oh, he said, forgive me. Sorry. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nicholas. I've been away from this village for a long time. I'm only back. Sure, you're the best looking girl I've seen. Won't you come to the dance with me? Ladies, what do you think? Good looking? Manners? Money? She brought him home to meet the parents. The parents were well impressed with this young man, and they agreed the two of them could walk out together, which was all there was to do in the olden days, just walk the roads together. But when it came the night of the dance, her father said that Nicholas could walk her to the dance and walk her home. She was delighted. She wore the red dress. It sort of clung to her. He wore one of those dark suits he always seemed to wear. They walked to the dance, a beautiful summer's night. You know, birds were singing even at that time of night. Took her to the dance, and they danced every dance together. The most handsome couple there. And then it was time for the return trip. But when they came out, it was dark. There was only just a little bit of moonlight, stars twinkling, and they walked down this lonely country road where the trees nodded like old men's heads. When they got to that point, the road forked, and there were two ways to Mary's house. There was a long way, or there was a shortcut over an old stone bridge. He turned to go that way. No, she said, we can't go that way. He said, what are you talking about? We always go that way. We came that way. No, Daddy says we're not to go that way after dark. Your daddy says. Your daddy's not here. He won't know. Here, come with me. I'll look after you. And taking her hand, he led her to the middle of the bridge, and there he stopped. Now, she had lost her heart to him weeks before. Her heart was pounding. And she looked up into his eyes, and you know, it was as if there was almost a reddish gleam about his eyes. And he said to her very quietly, do you remember the day you said you'd give your heart and soul for that dress? I know I've got your heart, but tonight I'll take your soul. And he grabbed her. The bridge opened. Flames came up. He was dragging her down and down. She started to squeal, but an old priest visiting the sick saw what was happening, ran onto the bridge and said, leave that young woman alone. Oh no, said Nicholas. No, she said she'd give her heart and soul for the dress. I won't leave here tonight without a heart and soul. Take mine. So immediately he let go of the girl, grabbed the priest. Mary ran home squealing and yelling, but by the time she got back up with her father and her brothers, the whole bridge had sailed over. Nicholas had disappeared, and all that was left of the old priest was his collar and his beads. So, if you come to Ireland, as we hope you will, and you go to County Mayo, over in the west, there's a small village there called Pontoon. They've even named bridges after it, Pontoon Bridge. And in Pontoon, you'll find there's an old stone bridge, and it's ringed around with barbed wire. And nobody but nobody crosses that bridge, night or day. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Love that one. Love that one. We're talking about courtship between each of us in our places where stories of courtship across the world and across the country. But one of the best stories of courtship I've heard took place in the village up from where we live, Carnlough, Susan, just up the coast, round by the Dog's Nose and the White Lady and Garran Point and into Carnlough. There's a story there of a man, and he was coming home one night with his bicycle with a wee bit too much to drink. And the bicycle is a wonderful prop if you've had too much to drink. You know, you can sort of walk along there and the bike will point you in the direction you need to go. And, you know, it's a very, because it's wheels and you just stroll on, and you get tired, you can just lean on the handlebars and just wait till you're just get steadied up. And Jimmy took the bicycle up the street and he thought he'd go in for one more drink before he'd go home. The only problem was the bar was upstairs. So he went in through the door of the bar and he took the bicycle in because in case the saddle would get wet and he wouldn't want to go home in a wet saddle. So he come in and he thought, right, come on, and he took up the stairs and he pushed one wheel up one step and another wheel up one step. And then he went up a wee bit more himself and then he pushed the bicycle another few feet up the steps and up he went up the stairs with the bicycle. And everybody stood back and watched him going up the stairs with the bicycle. Nobody offered a hand, they just watched him. And he went up to the very top of the stairs and got the bicycle onto the landing. And he went into the bar and he parked the bicycle against the bar counter. And he did something that has never happened since, ever again. He bought the bicycle a drink. And he stood and serenaded the bicycle for the rest of the evening, forgetting him to and fro in one piece. On the night of my 18th birthday, I went to see Tommy Makem and Liam Clancy. The great Tommy Makem and the great Liam Clancy, sadly no longer with us. And last September, I was on the south coast of Ireland in Waterford, and I made a point of making a pilgrimage to the great Liam Clancy's grave in Ring in County Waterford. And anytime I went to see them, they always sang this song. And I've never heard any other group sing it since. So I've decided that I'm going to have a go at it because it's one of the great songs of Courtship. It's so eloquent and to the point. And if you've heard this song before, please sing with it. We need your help with this. If you haven't, you'll soon get it. So you will. And this came to me because Liz has just been talking about Macs. If you're a Mac, you're more likely to hear the band She, and talking about Mary and the red dress. This is a song about Mary Mac. And Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. I'm going to marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. So I'll roar out the first line. And all you have to sing back is, my father's making me marry Mary Mac. That's all. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. One more time. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. I'm gonna marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. Got it? I know a little girl and her name is Mary Mac. Make no mistake, she's the one I'm gonna attack. But a lot of the fellas gotta get up on her track. I'm thinking that I'll have to get up early. Well, Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. Mary and her mother go an awful lot together. In fact, you hardly ever see the one without the other. And the people often wonder if it's Mary or her mother or both of them together that I'm curtain. Well, Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. The wedding's on Wednesday and everything's arranged. Soon her name is changed to mine unless her mind is changed. And I'm making the arrangements just about to raise. Marriage is an awful undertaking. Well, Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. Oh, Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary.
Here I am. A lot of the work that I do is encouraging people to tell stories. Somebody said they should have on the tombstone a long time hence, provoker of stories. And one of the things that I get children to do, teenagers to do, but also with other groups, is get people to talk about how, with the children, how their parents met, how their grandparents met. And so many people don't even talk about things like that. Maybe sometimes it's best not to, but sometimes you do. But also, I do a lot of reminiscence work with Alzheimer's patients and so on, and it's lovely to get them to talk about those times. There's a gleam and a far-off look in the eye, so I love those sort of stories. And little did I think I would hear a story, and I'm going to tell this. I don't normally tell personal stories, but I'm going to tell you this story. I told you earlier on about how I was the youngest. In Ireland, we're called a wee latian. It means I'm the afterthought. And I had these really older brothers and sisters, and I could never figure, I used to think maybe my sisters, my mother, you read all these books, So my friend was up from Dublin, and I said to her, Kay, whom Fergal knows, ask my mother how she met my father, because I'm good at telling other people how to do it, but I didn't do it. Well, dear, she said, I was 19, and I was engaged in England. And I was going with my brother to visit a friend of his. Again, her brother was in the army, and he was going to visit another soldier. And we went to this boarding house place, and there were 2 children, and they were crying. I have brothers and sisters. I said, what's wrong with these 2 children? They won't let me bath them. Mother says, I'll bath them. So she bathed them, got them into pajamas, read them a story, which I liked, put them to bed. And at the end of the evening, the man, who was the father of these children, walked her home and told her that his wife had died. And he'd brought his sister over from Ireland to look after these 2 children, but she'd gone off with a soldier, and if he didn't get somebody to marry him, the 2 children would have to go into a home. You've guessed it, haven't you? So on the first night she met him, she said, I'll marry you. I'll look after these 2 children. And she did. Picture Liz sitting there traumatized going, what? And she did. And my friend said, Mrs. Martin, did you love him? She said, I think there's far too much talk about love. I grew to love him. So there's my story. So if you don't know the stories in your families, you should ask them. There's good stories lurking there. There's good stories. But I'm going to tell you a story from my hometown. Susan knows it probably very well. It's called Ballymena. Ballymena people are always renowned for being mean. It's not true. Just a little bit thrifty, perhaps. But when I was growing up, there used to be great dances in the town hall. And the reason I'm telling you this, when I do the reminiscence work, a lot of the older people tell me stories about meeting their partners at dances. And probably some of you people could tell. Like my husband's aunt was a GI bride at the time when the American servicemen came to Ireland before they were deployed to Europe, during just in the Second World War. So I want to tell you a story that's set at that dance. At that time, the country boys would come in to dance on Saturday night and have fisticuffs with the town boys over the girls. Just simple, clean fist fight in the corner, and everybody got up and danced again, like something out of The Quiet Man, but anyway. And there was a young soldier. He was based up in our local barracks, St. Patrick's Barracks, and he came to the dance and he spotted a local girl. And as we would say, he had a right notion of her. In other words, he really liked her. And they danced, and he said, listen, can we make a date? So they agreed they would meet on the following Friday night. And he said, well, can you tell me where should we meet? She said, we'll meet at the corner of Castle Street and Church Street, just opposite the town hall. And he thought, that's fine, I can do that. Now he said to her, this was wartime, the blackout was still on. He said, how'll I know you in the dark? And she said, I'll be wearing my bright red coat. And I see Anne down there wearing red, so I must tell this story. So he got that in his head, red coat, red coat. So on the day in question, unfortunately, he got a little nervous, and he took a little drink, just to steady him up a bit. And then he took another one, and another one, and another one. And when he came down Castle Street, he was hitting off the walls, if you know what I mean. As my friend Colm Sands said, it wasn't the length of the street, it was the width of the street that was getting to him. And when he got to the foot of Castle Street, what stood there but a red post box, and he threw the arms round it. He said, "Ach, Mary, I wouldn't have recognised you without your teeth in." Now, if you come to England, Ireland, Scotland or Wales, and you go to post a letter in a red post box, that smiling mouth will be waiting for you. I hope you'll remember that story.
Oh yeah. Yes, there's a story at home about the gentleman trying to pluck up the courage to see if someone will date them or marry them or walk out with them. And it's interesting hearing Liz talking about how her mother and father met. My mother told Liz how my mother and father met, but she hasn't told me. Yeah. Liz said, "Do you know how your mum and dad met?" I said, "I think so." And she told me the whole story, but my mum hasn't told me. Oh, man. The story about trying to work up the courage to ask somebody, would you date them, is eventually the man walks up to the young woman standing and he says, "Listen, how would you like to be buried in our plot?" So, free to use that if you're stuck for words. This is a song about a man who found the person of his dreams, but didn't work out quite as well as he wanted it to. And the chorus is, "There's sure to be a row, there's sure to be a row. I do all of my life to please my wife, but there's sure to be a row." And this is written way, way back in the time before there was any wars or disagreements about who should do what. It's quite an old song. Oh, I am a poor old married man. I have a lovely wife. Though I do everything that's right, though still she plagues my life. Though I do everything that's right, she'll find a fault somehow. But if I dare to say one word, there's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. Life to please my wife, but there's sure to be a row. I give her all my wages after working hard all week. She gave me £5 for myself, and then she has a cheek to just give me £1. £1 will have to do. £1 a week, don't know how it's supposed to get me through. There's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. I do all in my life to please my wife. There's sure to be a row. She's taken in a lodger. He's single by and by. She's even given him the bed. On the sofa I must lie. She makes me wash my boxer shorts. It don't seem right somehow. And if I don't wash his as well, there's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. I do all of my life to please my wife, but there's sure to be a row. One more time. There's sure to be a row. There's sure to be a row. I do all in my life to please my wife, but there's sure to be a row. My wife flies in tomorrow night. Don't tell her I sang that.
I think there's just time for me to do a traditional story and then for Fergal to sing a song, and then we'll bid you farewell. The story I want to tell you is special because this is the 150th anniversary of W.B. Yeats's death, I think it is, or birth, one or the other. Birth, sorry. It's the altitude, that's what it is, birth. So I'm going to be doing some stories actually at Drumcliff Churchyard where he's buried, and I'm really looking forward to that. But he collected stories and got inspiration from what he called the peasantry. So this is one of those stories that inspired one of his most famous poems. And you can come and ask me what it is afterwards. This story comes from Cong in County Mayo. There once was a beautiful lady who lived in a castle high up by a lake. She was engaged to be married to a king's son. But a month before the wedding, the young man was murdered and his body thrown into the waters near the castle. They say that that young woman nearly went out of her mind with grief, locked herself up in the castle and wasn't seen day in, day out, week in, week out. But there appeared about that time, in the waters of the lake, a strange fish, a white trout. Nobody had ever seen such a fish before. They thought there must be some magic attached to it, so no one would put any hurt or harm on it. And it swam there year in, year out, longer than the oldest people in that place could tell you. But then there came to that country an army of strangers, determined to teach the people new ways. And one hard-hearted villain heard the story of the white trout and decided to catch it, kill it, cook it, eat it, just for sport. So he fished and he fished. The fish knew no harm, took the bait. He pulled it from the water, he took it home, he put it in a pan, he cooked it. When he flipped it over, there was no mark, no burn. So he cooked the other side, cooked it. No mark or burn. Perhaps you taste better than you look, my pretty. And he took a knife and plunged it into the fish, and the squeal that came out of that fish would make her blood run cold. And there rose up from the ground the most beautiful lady, in a long white dress, a crown on her head, and blood pouring from her arm. "Look where you cut me, you villain," she said. "Look where you cut me." "Lady," he said, "I didn't know it was you." "Why couldn't you leave me alone?" she said. "Why couldn't you leave me alone to do my duty?" "Your duty?" "I'm waiting for my own true love. He's to come to me by water, and if he comes while I'm gone, I'll turn you into a pinking little fish and leave you to swim those waters as long as grass grows or water flows. What can I do? Put me back in the water where I belong." "But how can I put such a fine..." But when he looked, the lady had disappeared, and there was the fish flapping. He scooped it up, slipped it into the water, and the water ran red for a while on account of the blood, and then it ran clear, and that fish was left to swim those waters, still there to this day. But as for that soldier, a changed man, no. He fasted 3 times a week. He turned hermit. He lived in the cave. He prayed every day. He never ate fish, not even on a Friday. And from that day to the day he died, he prayed twice a day for the soul of the white trout. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Thank everybody for coming out to see us this afternoon. Thanks to everybody involved in enabling this. Yeah, why? That's right. Enabling this little meeting, gathering to happen. Liz is doing The Dead Man's Penny on Thursday. It's a unique story, original story of music and the story, a true story of associated with World War I. And I would encourage everybody, if you're around, please go and see it. It's a beautiful, poignant piece. "I'll tell me ma when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pulled my hair and they stole my comb, but that's all right till I go home." The best courtship song that Belfast ever produced. And it was lovely to meet Susan, originally from Belfast. Lovely. Thanks, Susan. And thanks to all the folks on the sound there. Thanks very much. So let's try and stamp the floorboards and raise our voices. "Tell me ma when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. Pull my hair, stole my coat, but that's alright till I go home. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Belfast City. She is a virgin, 1, 2, 3, please will you tell me who is she?" Albert Mooney says he loves her, all the boys are fighting for her. Knocking the door and ringing the bell, say, "Oh my true love, are you well?" Out she comes as white as snow, rings on her fingers, bells on her toe. Old Johnny Mooney says he'll die if he doesn't get the girl with a roving eye. "And tell me ma when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pulled my hair and stole my comb, but that's alright till I go home. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Belfast City. She is a curtain, 1, 2, 3, please won't you tell me who is she?" Then the wind and the rain and the hail blow high, and snow come tumbling from the sky. She's as sweet as apple pie, she'll put her all on by and by. when she gets a love of her own, she'll soon get a man when she comes home. Let them all come still, she will, for it's all but moon and she loves still. Tell me, ma, when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pull my hair and stole my comb, and that's alright till I go home. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Belfast City. She is a Courtship 1, 2, 3. Please will you tell me who is she? One more time all on your own. And tell me, ma, when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pull my hair and
Stole my comb.
that's alright till I go home. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Belfast City. She is a Courtship 1, 2, 3. Please will you tell me who is she? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
In case anybody wants